Hey y'all, here are OS reviews. Towards the end of 2020, we checked out a budget tablet called the Vastking SA10, and I really liked it because of the super strong construction quality for the price of under $200. The entire thing is made out of a unibody chunk of aluminum and feels a lot more sturdy than other alternatives that we had seen before. But the company here is now back with a new model called the K10, and it actually shares pretty similar specifications, including an octa-core processor by Rockchip, along with 3 GB of RAM. They're still not going to be flagship level, but they're still focusing on the budget segment. In fact, the K10 tablet here is even cheaper than the SA10 in terms of the price point by about 10 to 20 bucks. So you can find it for around 150 to 160 bucks when you shop around. This time the bezel size has been shrinked considerably, so it looks much more sleek, and other specifications include a very clean version of Android 10, a full HD resolution just like before, support for dual band 2.4G and 5G Wi-Fi, and 13 megapixel plus a 5 megapixel front-facing camera. However, what really makes the K10 tablet a bit more interesting is, compared to other budget tablets on the market, this one actually comes with an optional keyboard case that you can pick up that is designed specifically for the K10. So there's pogo contact points on the bottom of the case that you can snap into here, a folding kickstand, and also a trackpad if you want to get some more productivity done. This, however, is sold separately, and you'll have to pay around 35 bucks more to pick it up. Battery here was rated to last around 12 hours of endurance. It's 6,000 milliamp hours. There's also a micro SD card slot that you can use to expand the built-in memory up to 512 gigabytes extra. At 8 millimeters, it's also going to be slimmer and more lightweight than the SA10 that we saw earlier, along with compatibility with Bluetooth 5.0. So here's the box. It is pretty compact, and inside of it we have, of course, just the tablet itself that we'll take a closer look at in a moment. Other accessories are inclusive of a USB Type-C charging cable, a wallet charger, and there's also a SIM card tool that you can use to pop out the tray for accessing the micro SD expansion slot, although this is not a cellular connected tablet, so you can't use data with it, so it's only Wi-Fi, but again, expected for this price. There's also a quick user guide. Finally, for the keyboard case, we also have, again, the case itself that looks like this, which we'll also be taking a closer look at later in this video. Here's the tablet itself with the screen turned on, and immediately it is a pretty good looking panel. As a full HD resolution, it's plenty sharp, and again, very small bezels compared to the previous SA10, and the sides of the tablet are once again constructed out of aluminum and metal, so it does feel quite sturdy. In terms of the ports, we do have a power key in here, which is slightly recessed to prevent any accidental hits. There's a volume rocker, and then we have the Type-C port here for charging. On the bottom of the tablet, we have access to the stereo speakers, along with the pogo contacts for the keyboard case. And on the very back here, we see the antenna is slightly embedded here, which is a plastic strip, but everything else that wraps around it is completely made out of metal. So it has still a very solid construction quality, which is impressive for this price range. Almost something we've come to expect from Vastking after seeing some of their products, is the really good build at this price point. It doesn't creak or cringe, everything just feels super solid, almost like something that you'll expect from Samsung or Apple to make. Now the very rear here does have the camera, again 13 megapixels with autofocus and an LED flash, has almost kind of a chrome accent on it, although it is slightly raised from the surface of the tablet, so there's a bit of a bump. Here's a side-by-side comparison in terms of the size, and you can just see how much larger the body of the SA10 was because of the bigger bezels. Again, in terms of the overall fluidity of the UI, the octa-core chip here is really doing a pretty decent job from Rockchip, a solid choice for the budget segment, and in terms of general navigation, you really won't encounter too much lag or delay. The experience does feel pretty similar to the SA10 in that regard. Yes, it's not going to be a flagship killer if you're talking about comparing it with something like an iPad Air that sells for many times the price, but for what it is, everyday usage does feel quite smooth and responsive. Keyboard case itself has a nice texture to it overall that's grippy and comfortable to hold, doesn't really attract any fingerprints or smudges, and the entire thing is magnetic, so it is held into place pretty well when it's closed. The magnets are also integrated into the design of the tablet as well, so whenever you flip everything closed, the screen of the tablet will also automatically go to sleep. The metal strip on the center here also acts as the hinge, which you can use at a variety of different angles. It's quite similar to a surface, and I'll show you guys that later on in this video. And we have on the inside the rigid plastic part that needs to snap into place for the tablet, along with the pogo contacts for the data transmission, and then we have just the keyboard itself. The layout does feel pretty comfortable, considering this is a very compact 10-inch keyboard at the end of the day, but I still found myself getting a good typing speed after using it for a few minutes. And then the trackpad itself also has a decent enough size. The clicks do feel pretty tactile, and it supports multi-touch gestures as well for swiping. And the texture here is the same as on the outside of the keyboard case. It is soft touch and overall provides a nice rest for your palms as you are typing. Snapping the tablet into place is overall pretty simple. Just apply a bit of pressure, and then on the outer parameters, snap everything in. Now we can just unlock it just by using the spacebar, and the mouse just pops up on screen, recognized almost instantly. And again, if I close the keyboard case here, you can see how the screen will also automatically lock. But if I open up the casing, you can see the screen here will also wake up. So there has been some optimization when it comes to the magnets, helping the screen know if it should be on or off when you close up the entire package. And speaking of, when we talk about the kickstand part next, that's really, again, helped by this hinge mechanism, which is very stiff. So you can actually pry this away from the plastic compartment that's holding the tablet, and this part, again made out of metal, allows you to position it at different angles. So you can even hold its weight like this. For a really down low angle, here's a profile view, and it, again, is similar to a surface in the sense that it's not restricted to just one angle. You can then use the kickstand to put it into a higher angle or pop it all the way up, depending on how high up your table is. It feels quite robust and sturdy. Now, if you shop around, there's actually another tablet model that has a keyboard 2-in-1 convertible design for around this price range by Dragon Touch. That's called the Notebook 102. However, this model here is definitely a better value in my opinion, since it sells for the same price. However, this one has a higher resolution screen, again full HD versus 720p on Dragon Touch's model, and also a better quality keyboard case with the metal here for the kickstand versus a plastic design on the alternative, making it one of the best options if you're looking for a 2-in-1 convertible Android tablet in the price range of under $200. Perhaps the only accessory that this tablet doesn't have would be an active stylus pen if you're comparing with something from Samsung, but again, for this price range, it's really hard to complain. So software-wise, again, we are running on pretty much a stock version of Android 10.0 without any bloatware aside from just the Google apps, which are all pre-installed, and you can even access the different swipe navigation gestures for things like multitasking. Really, there's not too much going on here, which is a good thing in this case, and everything for the navigation of the UI is still feeling pretty smooth and responsive. Talking about the screen here in a little bit more detail, overall, I think it's a good quality panel for the price range. In terms of brightness, maybe it could be a touch brighter if you're outdoors, but for indoor usage and with moderate lighting, you certainly won't have any problems. And in terms of some stock wallpapers, they also give you a handful that you can pick from, and it shows off, again, the vibrancy of the screen quite well. Good viewing angles as expected from an IPS display. Android OS as a whole can still be further optimized when it comes to usage with a mouse. Since it still is predominantly a touch-based OS, you'll occasionally find yourselves having to use the touchscreen to do certain actions. But overall, it still is a decent experience for a, I guess, Chromebook alternative if you want to think of it like that. And in terms of some of the controls, I can tap on escape to exit out of the screen. Everything feels pretty smooth. In terms of watching back videos, you can see here this is loading in 1080p and streaming along pretty quickly. We're also able to scrub between parts of the video, and overall loading speeds are also quite fast. So reception quality using the dual band Wi-Fi is pretty good. Never really encountered any disconnections, helping keeping watching videos and loading web pages still relatively quick and snappy. The quality of the speakers here, we can turn up the volume. It's decent in the sense that it has sufficient loudness, and it is a stereo pair, one on the left, one on the right, so you get some good separation. However, it's not going to be the most depth or dynamic speaker in the world. Sometimes I do wish there's a bit more punch in the lower frequency. It suffices for watching YouTube videos or watching a Netflix film by yourself, but if you want to improve the quality, you can always use standard headphones or connect to Bluetooth sources to further get better performance out of it. If you want to do a quick test of something like web browsing, let's jump into Chrome and see how it handles that. And scrolling is working pretty decently. We can also jump into, say, an Amazon page and again see how it kind of compares and stacks up. Loading back and forth between the pages, everything is still held in the RAM here, similar to Lenovo's Chromebook Duet, which also has this form factor. So we can see here that complex sites like The Verge also are loading back really nicely with plenty of sharpness, and this is a complex page with lots of videos and ads and text and photos, but still is doing an okay job. Maybe not everything is instantaneous when it comes to loading. As you can see, there are some occasional moments of hesitation, but in general, it's more than usable, and you really won't feel frustrated in terms of browsing the web with it. And I can still jump back and forth between these previous pages. In terms of the other applications, again, very stock feeling, so including things like utility tools like the calculator, other things like the clock. There is a basic FM radio built on in, and you can of course download other things as you would need. Perhaps one of the most useful built-in apps this time would be the Google Keep Notes, just because of the support with the keyboard makes it really neat to be able to use it for typing out quick memos as well as documents, and then save it for when you want to return to it later on. Mentioning the camera here briefly, I would say performance is average. It's passable for what it is. It's not going to really rival a smartphone anyways, but for things like document scanning or doing a quick snap for emergency cases, it still is alright. Some of the other budget tablets I've seen tend to give you only 8 megapixels, so this will allow you to do some more zooming in and showing a bit more detail as you're using it. Here's what the flash looks like in darker subjects. Really the last thing to talk about here would be the performance with some gaming and other applications you can install from the Google Play Store. Pretty much everything to your content, since it is very up to date in terms of the software, and also the memory here. Out of the 32 gigabytes, you get around 25 gigs, which are free after the operating system is installed for you to customize with your own media, documents, and games or apps, but you can further supplement that again with the micro SD card. I would say it's able to handle pretty much any game you want to throw at it, although if you're talking about the most demanding titles like say PUBG or Asphalt series, you may have to occasionally wait a little longer for the games to open up, and perhaps the frame rates, you'll see some occasional dips, and you may want to lower some of the settings for graphics to get the smoothest experience. But for most mid-end games and less animation heavy games, it still opens and works really quickly without any delays or complaints. And so here's a quick demo of a racing game called Drive. You can see here how the game basically opened in around 5 or 6 seconds and still feels very responsive in terms of playing along just fine, and the screen here doing a great job. The sensitivity of the screen, by the way, is also quite good in terms of responding to my touch without any real issues that I found. Perhaps there is a slight degree of glare at times if you're pointing at different light sources, just because of the 2.5D curved nature of the glass and the fact that there might be a ever so slight gap between the glass and the screen underneath, and it doesn't seem to be as tight of a lamination as on some of the flagship tablets. But overall it still is respectable and overall looks great in terms of the experience that you'll be getting here. Didn't really encounter any issues. Here's another game I was trying out with the tablet earlier, and again it's working pretty nicely as far as interacting with it. The keyboard, you can also use some of the keys if you want to remap it for playing certain games. Mostly kind of retro emulator style games do work quite well, but of course most of the Android games are optimized to work better with touch. But again, that's another versatility if you want to use the keyboard down below in certain scenarios. And again, overall working without too much problem. So that's more or less it as far as our hands-on review of this new KingPad K10 from Vastking. I think more than anything, it's showing that even budget tablets are just getting better and better these days in terms of the performance here being really not shabby at all. Again, running on an Octa-Core chip that is more than smooth enough for basic usage. A screen here that is pretty sharp for watching videos, and really the key feature of this model is the optional keyboard. So if you want something with added productivity for doing typing and emails and document editing with a kickstand, this is going to be a neat function to consider for this low price range. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Vastking K10 Android 2-in-1 tablet.